AskReddit by Catherine Collective. What has been your biggest "I really thought I knew this person" moment? A guy I was kinda irregularly working with for 2-3 years as a student. We'd meet once a week in a cafe to talk through some project related issues. Was one day wanted by Interpol. Turned out he invited a random language teacher to his flat and decapitated her. He might have been an arsehole, but there's a difference between an arsehole and a murderer. I'd argue there is also a difference between a murderer and a decapitator. I had a friend of 18 years overdose on heroin. None of us knew he did drugs. He didn't even smoke cigarettes. It was beyond shocking. I knew a couple had only recently gotten married. They were ultra-conservative Christians, didn't even have alcohol at their wedding reception. Husband traveled to the city for work, where she later found out he'd been exposed to a faster lifestyle. She found him dead in the bathroom from a heroin overdose. She never knew he'd even taken a sip of alcohol, let alone was a drug user. I tweaked the reporting system for a large payroll system to improve its runtime from 8 hours to only 2. Submitted the changes to the head programmer with all my testing results. She took all the credit, used my expertise, and told management I had nothing to do with the improvements after I called her out on her BS. Worked alongside of her for 5 years prior and thought we were friends. Always hide Easter eggs of authorship. Dude I went to high school with and hung out with in our little clique. He was arrested driving down to Daytona to meet an underage girl with tape and knives in his trunk. Deleted. Turned up at a party. A buddy of mine was there. Bodybuilder. He was taking steroids at the time. Door security at a rough Liverpool club. Hard bloke that you would not want to get the wrong side of. He was wearing a charming dress, impeccable makeup and amp, drinking a cocktail. The charming dress is why he doesn't skip leg day. When my wife cheated on me. Sounds really stereotypical, but she was the last person on earth I would have thought would do something like that. Can relate. Just honestly didn't ever see my ex-husband doing that. I was busy taking care of our 1-year-old daughter and he couldn't handle not being the center of attention anymore. Meanwhile, I was trusting him to give me the room to learn how to be a mother and grow alongside me as a father. He just didn't have the potential I thought he did, and it was pretty rough to come to terms with that. Good friend of mine, known each other since we were very young, etc. On the phone one day and he sends me a screenshot of a Reddit post he thought was funny. I joke about how now I'm going to go stalk his account, user visible in a comment, and he gets freaked out and hangs up. Thought it was strange, so checked out his account. He was active in some very disturbing subs talking about how he successfully seduced a 10-year-old girl and if there was anything actually legally wrong with doing things with her since he was also underage, 17. Me and best mate at the time reported him, but nothing came of it since they couldn't prove he had nefarious intent. Aware enough of his Reddit history to verbally freak out and hang up the phone. But not aware enough to just delete the account or the incriminating content first. Truly, dumbus. When my parents divorced, my dad introduced his girlfriend to my sister and me, a day later. It obviously meant he was cheating on my mom. I never forgave him for it. Oh wow, at least my dad had the decency to wait 2 weeks after the divorce to introduce me to his new wife, apparently mistress of 5 years. He was so proud to show off their wedding photos with his 3 new daughters, not taking into account his own children, who didn't know about any step-family or wedding at all. New wife kept the house clear of any photos of us. And when I pointed that out to my dad, he claimed he never noticed, yelled at new wife about it, who said, "Calm down. They are in the console drawer. They're not good photos." Fine. I'll put them out. He worshipped her. I had no idea who he was anymore, or ever, for that matter. Dated the son of my favorite teachers in HS. Everyone absolutely loved them. They were always involved in school events and class trips. One day I noticed these horrible scars on his back. These parents beat the shit out of him. That's so sad. Minor compared to all of you, but I dated a guy who bragged about how smart and successful he was and made me feel like an idiot for sticking with one job for 5+ years. He said I was too financially conservative and not enough of a risk taker. He talked big about his salary and how important he was. It turns out that he was continually job hopping due to performance issues, bad decisions and boredom. This is a funny how did I not know this about you moment. Several years ago, I was flipping around on the television and came across something or other about the band Disturbed. Just like that, out of nowhere, my husband started basically giving me a biography of every member of the band, as though it was all common knowledge. We had been together about 10 years at this point, and I had no idea he even liked Disturbed, much less knew so much about them. He'd literally never talked about it before. Surprised the heck out of me. My boyfriend does this with me sometimes. We'll be looking online at random stuff and I find out he's super into this show that aired 50 years ago on cable TV and will tell me how it changed his life with no prior knowledge on my end. He even knew what it was. Lol. I thought I knew my parents until I had my own kids. Now I feel like they're just people who were in the house while I was growing up a lot of the time. I can relate to that. After my mother died and my father remarried, he moved far away from my siblings and myself. In the past I thought that he was just someone who wanted to spend more time with his family but could not because of work, social obligations, etc. Now I realize he just doesn't really care about his children and grandchildren. Worked with a dude for a few years. He got arrested for child porn and keeping his children locked in kennel cages. You think you know someone. In 8th grade, I went to school with a kid who was walking to his buddy's house to watch the Super Bowl. He came across one of his neighbors. She was 8 or 9 years old. He brutally murdered her, put the mangled body in a trash bag, threw her body in a dumpster and then continued to his friend's house and watched the game as if nothing happened. Jesus. My sister has always been selfish. She was spoiled terribly by my parents. It seemed as if things were better as she grew up and had her own family. She called me upset because her son's Cub Scout pack was accusing her of stealing money. She claimed they were terrible at keeping accurate spending records and she could prove that and that she in fact helped them get the books straight. She lied. She stole $10K from children because she thought no one would notice. She's a terrible human and I went no contact eventually. Similar situation with my sister. She always lacked empathy and only thought about herself. She would later go on to steal tens of thousands from our parents. If you knew her now you would never know she's essentially a criminal who temporarily destroyed multiple lives. While her actions resulted in long-lasting consequences still apparent today, our lives are by no means in the shambles she left them in years ago. She married into a small amount of money and has created an image she believes has erased her past. There are many of us who will never forget. I was friends with these two women at my old job. I was about 25 and they were late 30s and mid 40s. We got on pretty well and hung out after work too, so I thought we were cool. Gets to the week of my birthday, that's on the Friday, and every day they are doing a full-on countdown, hyping it up, telling everyone that comes into the kitchen about it. Bearing in mind I never brought it up. I don't really do office birthdays, but they'd found out off Facebook and decided it was a big deal. I didn't expect much TBF, like I wasn't hoping for presents, but it seemed obvious they must have something planned. Nope. Not even a card, not even a happy birthday. Came in on the Friday and they wouldn't even look at me, just kept glancing over and giggling to each other. Then end of the day comes and as I walk out they've got a crowd around their desks, still no happy birthday or even a goodbye turns. I hate adults who act like high schoolers. This happened back in June. I went to Europe with my family for 2 weeks. A friend of mine told me she'd watch my dogs and cat. I get home and find out that she hadn't been there in days. They had no water, no food, and one of my pups has severe allergies and she hadn't given her medications. She had literally eaten herself raw. She was missing tufts of hair and had sores everywhere. Suffice to say, we're not friends anymore. Oh. Forgot about the best part. I paid her $400 to take care of them, and instead, she spent that money on alcohol, weed, everything but my dogs. I've never hated someone so much. One of my very closest friends, we did everything together. I referred to this girl as my sister. She had some severe mental health problems, and some people had warned me to keep my distance, but I loved her, and thought she'd never want to hurt me. Then one day, when she was drunk, she told me that if she ever committed suicide, she'd arrange it so I was the one to find her body. She trusted that I'd know what to do. She expected me to be flattered. Couple of years later, she tried to do exactly that, then was furious with me when I called 911. Yeah. I had an ex that threatened suicide when we broke up that was mad when I called for a health check and told them he threatened to kill himself. I've had too many people do that for real that I will not be responsible for someone else doing it. A friend I met at uni in first year while studying psychology. Friends for 6 years and far along in our journey of study. Very long pathway to become a registered psychologist here. We're both mums to young kids doing the study parent juggle. In regular contact supporting each other with the study load. She had a breakdown and quickly spiraled into alcohol and meth addiction. From a very affluent family, supportive husband, walked away from her life, child protection involvement. Saw her earlier this year at her birthday party thrown by her family and she is a shell of her former self, tweaking and twitching, paranoid, disorganized thinking and speech, completely psychotic. I'm grieving the loss of my friend. I'm so sad and I miss her so much. She's too far gone. I don't think she'll ever recover. I graduated, got qualified, just about to get my clinical endorsement. Sounds like my sister. I still grieve for what she was. Deleted. Dude just wanted an excuse to kill someone if all it took was $3k. I called my husband's best friend pleading for help for his opioid addiction that I thought just started about a year before. This friend lives on the opposite side of the country and grew up with him. I tell him about the situation and he goes, oh shit, he's into that again. Again? I had no idea. I thought I knew this man through and through. We were best friends for 8 years before we even started dating. We are now divorced. Safe to say I have some trust issues. Best friend 15 years ago, paid for us to move to Colorado together, literally paid for everything. Soon as we were settled into a place he tells me he's always hated me and knew I had resources he could take advantage of. Colorado was his idea, but he sold it so well. Also, we had countless times hanging out, laughs, having each other's backs. There was never a reason to question this being my best friend. We never fought either. That was a tough one. Oddly happened to me 1 week into marriage number 2. It took 4 years for them to leave to follow their heart, which oddly coincided with when I finally stopped sharing my resources. Meanwhile, due to reproductive coercion, we have a child in common where they, on multiple occasions, have used as a pawn to extort money out of me. I am so disappointed that I was part of their get-rich scheme. I feel so sorry for the broken childhood we have given my child. A friend from middle school was killed in a home invasion. He was the burglar. My husband rolled over and went back to sleep after I got a call saying my dad was dead in the hospital. Had to drive myself. Always thought he'd step up when I needed him in the ways I stepped up for him. Turns out I should have asked. So, I'm still friends with somebody I dated for a little while 35 years ago. Now I feel old. We're close, even if we don't see each other much. My mom died last year, and I messaged my friend. She knew mom was sick. She called me 3 minutes later. I'd expect a spouse to show at least that much concern. My ex had called me to talk about the new woman he was seeing. He says she cooks and cleans, but she's really not that pretty. She's kinda stupid too. She can't have intelligent conversations like we used to. All of a sudden it clicked. He's talked shit about every single person he knows, then turns around and smiles in their faces. That two-faced wretch.